All right, so welcome to today's podcast, Why You Attract the Wrong Companies Even Though You're Awesome. Today is part 2, The Solution. This is Scott Engler. I am a published author and speaker on contemporary job search strategies, professional branding, really using LinkedIn to advance in your career and business. And today I'm going to talk about part 2 of a 2-part article series I actually wrote for recruiter.com, and I'm making a podcast about it. So just to touch briefly, if you didn't get a chance to watch or listen to the first one, is I really went over the problem. And so the problem is why you continue to track the wrong companies and opportunities, even though you are awesome and have a lot to offer. And it is actually one of the biggest, if not the biggest, complaints and challenges I hear from people all the time. In fact, I have assessments that I give to job seekers or potential clients, and that is definitely something that I continue to hear over and over and over again, that they're not getting many opportunities, but when they do, they're not opportunities that align with them. So I've really noticed why that is. So obviously I work with people on those kind of factors, but I also made some articles about it. So the good news is Article 1 was really identifying the problem and why that happens. So today I'm going to really talk more about the solution. So you're welcome to look over the first podcast in my videos, but today we're going to dive into the solution. So what the problem is obviously you're attracting these wrong opportunities. What the solution is to find a balance between having goals, being clear, yet at the same time being open and flexible. Now, this is really challenging for most people. I know it is for myself. Because there's kind of this component of doing both things creatively and simultaneously. So to illustrate my point, and in the article, I kind of gave a really pertinent example, was when I first started my business, I was working a part-time job to kind of supplement the income. I was working as a leasing agent. So I've always been very observant and just kind of seen how my experiences translate over to, what my current work is or lessons. So what I noticed was there was really 3 types of people that would come and look at the apartment units that I was touring them and obviously, selling to them to lease out if it was a good fit. So the first type of people were the people that just, for whatever reason, could not get clear on what they wanted, couldn't make any type of decision, and were just extremely wishy-washy. Now, for me personally, these were often the hardest people to work with because I just can't identify with them as much, that they just can't make any decision. I've always been much more on the other end. But there is a lot of people like this, right? They're just really up in the air about everything, and they don't make decisions. And while there's a decent, thing for people that are a little bit more like go with the flow, in these cases, when it's this extreme, it's not a good thing. In fact, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, is the top selling personal developed success book of all time, said one component of people that were not living the lives that they wanted, one distinguishing factor was that they were extremely indecisive. So again, this is not a good thing when it's too extreme. And what I found was when they came to me, they had already been looking for places for months, and they're like, oh yeah, we're just looking for this place. And they just, for whatever reason, just really couldn't specify what they wanted. And, and then they would just be like, oh, well, I guess we're going to just check out our other options and, figure it out. And it's just like, how much longer do you need to be searching around for? They were just looking around for months and months and months, and they weren't finding anything because they didn't even really have any clue what they wanted, and they weren't willing to really look into that. So that was the first kind of people. The second kind of people were very, very clear on things they wanted, but also very, very clear on things that they didn't want. And it was also more so the energy behind it. There was this rigidity to it. So the example I give is they were very clear of everything that they really wanted, but also like they were just also very vocal about things that they didn't like or didn't want. And the difference is that like, you know, I'd be touring them and we might hit like 3 of the 4 things that they were like really interested in. And then they just like couldn't let go of like this small detail. Like for instance, it'd be on the 3rd floor instead of the 2nd floor. And it had everything else that they wanted. And it was just like, you know, like everything they said they wanted, but like they kept focusing on this one detail and they just couldn't let it go. And then they would be like, no, you know, I just can't do it. Like it was like they just couldn't really, they didn't have the ability to allow themselves to see the bigger picture or to be like realistic. Like the truth is you're never going to find something that has every single thing that you want and doesn't have any, you know, it's just like, that's not the way life works. There's always going to be things that we need to kind of have a little bit more acceptance about, you know, and just to focus, right, and be grateful. I mean, to me, that's the human existence. So they really weren't really willing to do that, though. And what I found was even if they did get a unit, they were the worst tenants because they were always complaining, and they were usually obsessed with like getting the next unit. It was just like they had this illusion of the perfect apartment, and it really is an illusion. And so they just would keep calling about like, oh, when's this unit going to, you know, open up that's on the 2nd floor? And so they were just honestly they were difficult in the short term and difficult in the long term. Now the third group of people were the people that I want to really illustrate and obviously show as being more of the solution, right, to not attracting the unhealthy companies. So the third people were clear about what they wanted. They were clear about what was important to them. They did have some non-negotiables. However, they were also a lot more flexible and open. It was easier for them to see the bigger picture. Like it's like, I guess like if you know, you think of like a reed, you know, and they just kind of could go with the wind a little bit, not like, you know, just something that's just going to crack that's like standing so stiff. And you know, I found that they were just more open-minded, easier to have discussions with, and easier to redirect. Usually they'd redirect themselves, but like, you know, focusing again, it's like, okay, we did say the vaulted ceiling in the gym, and this was the most important to us. Okay, you know, it's like they were able to kind of go back and really see the bigger picture. And so the thing was, the interesting distinctions with them was, even though they were clear about what they wanted, they did have non-negotiables, things that were important enough. They're like, no, I can't live somewhere that doesn't have a washer and dryer. You know what I mean? And like that was really important to them, so that was a non-negotiable. But they were more flexible on things that weren't as, you know, big of a deal to them. They were also willing to walk away, was a big distinguishing factor. They didn't just take something just because if it wasn't a good fit, they were willing to walk away in a manner that was typically graceful and, you know, no hard feelings. So that was good. And the other factor that I found to really most affirm the effectiveness of embodying these traits was they were the best tenants to have long term as well. So they're the best people to work with short term. We didn't always sign them up, but when we did, they were the best tenants. They were typically very low maintenance, really appreciative, really grateful, didn't complain much, easy to work with, you know what I mean? And so that's really what I want to illustrate is in your job search, why are you attracting the wrong companies and opportunities? Okay, well, the truth is when people don't know what they want, then other people don't know what you want, and so you're probably not going to attract that many opportunities. And if you do, it's going to be like places that are so desperate that they don't really know what kind of fit they want, and they're not really paying attention. They're going to be the ones that reach out to you, and then you're kind of obviously doing what a lot of people do, which is attracting the toxic or wrong opportunities to them. Then you got the person that's like extremely rigid and just like stake in the sand and just like not willing to budge on anything. And the truth is, in life, each situation has different pros and cons. Each company is going to have some nuance or whatever, and you could just feel it when you talk to these people. You're like, oh, this person's going to be, they're going to be really difficult. They're going to be really demanding. They're going to, complain about everything. And it comes out even in your writing, in your resume. You don't think it does, but it does. Like, because we've all been there. That's the thing. We've all been really rigid. I know, it's like sometimes we're like so sick of, one reason we could be there, we might be so sick of not getting what we want, we feel like we have to be so firm about it. So it doesn't mean that if you haven't been clear or if you're being really rigid that you can't change. I hope that's not the message you take. It's just that, yeah, we've all been there, but try to practice being more open, right? Practice just seeing the bigger picture, writing out, okay, what's most important to me, focusing more on that, realizing if you look back in your life, anything that's ever happened, there's going to be things that are awesome about it, that you love, and then there's, that's just part of life, a yin and a yang. There's going to be things that, may be less than your fantasy of what perfect would be, right? And that's just really the way life is. And so, practice being that person number 3 is what I'd say. Because even with the person number 3, it's like, you never know what could happen. I mean, those people were typically enjoyable to work with. And the truth is like, if I did have something that was available to them somewhere else, like let's say I owned another property, in this case, I didn't own the property, but I'm saying like, that would be the kind of person that I would actually want to tell, because A, they were enjoyable to work with, they were easy to work with, they were clear about what they wanted. So if they told me, hey, Scott, I wanted a condominium, and this is what I was looking for by the water, I'd say, well, we don't have that here, but I could tell you we have that at our other location. Let me make a phone call. And I would make the phone call and go out of my way to do that, even if it didn't, particularly benefit me or not, because I know that person is the kind of person that's going to be a good long-term tenant in most cases. So I'm going to be more than happy to go out of my way to help them get what they want if it's in my power to do so. So I just, those are the messages I want to really convey to you guys today. If you're not, the proof as always is in the pudding. If you are not attracting the right opportunities to yourself right now with jobs, roles, then the first thing you need to start looking at is yourself. Are you being clear? Are you telling people what you want? Are you putting that you could do 50 skills for 20 different jobs? That is not clear at all. Be specific. Less is more. We live in a digital overload world. I know I sound like a broken record. Be clear. The example of the job seeker I gave, that I'd met on recruiter.com. For me, to be clear, I'm not a recruiter, I'm a career coach. However, I do work with some clients where I provide a customized search on their internal database, as well as take on some of recruiter.com's customers as career coaching clients. That being said, he was very clear. VP of Marketing, Director of Marketing. I want to stay in the Northeast. I currently live in New York. Here's the kind of organizations and roles I like to work in, or like the kinds of companies and industries I've worked with in marketing. I'd prefer these two. I don't want to work, I don't want to move to the West Coast. So he was very clear about what he wanted and wouldn't do. And again, I illustrated him being flexible. I said, sir, I've noticed a lot of VP of marketing roles in Atlanta. Would you be open if I see more jobs like that in the future? Yeah, Scott, send it over. If it really feels like a good fit, I'd be more than happy to look into that opportunity. So again, this guy was really crystal clear, but he also showed a ability to be flexible and really look at the bigger picture. So I hope that was helpful. Scott Engler, if you'd like, you could follow me. I write articles all the time on LinkedIn. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, or if you're wanting help in this area for yourself, you could email me with serious inquiries, buildingyourownbrand@gmail.com. Thanks so much, guys.